Nobody questioned why the new substitute teacher never raised his voice, never lost control of even the toughest classes, until a student noticed the faded scar on his hand and asked the question that changed everything. He walked into Jefferson High School every morning at 6:45 a.m., 30 minutes before the first bell. Gray slacks, white button-down shirt, and a navy blue tie that he adjusted exactly once in the hallway mirror. The students called him Mr. Thompson, the quiet substitute who never yelled, never threatened, just stood at the front of the classroom with a presence that somehow made even the troublemakers sit up straight. Welcome to Story with Jorge. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden identity and quiet strength, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These are the stories that remind us heroes walk among us every single day. Room 237 was known as the graveyard. It's where they sent the substitute teachers to die. The worst classes, the kids who had eaten alive 3 subs in the past month alone. But when James Thompson walked in that Tuesday morning, something was different. He didn't introduce himself with the usual nervous energy, didn't start with rules or threats. He simply wrote one word on the whiteboard: respect. Then he turned around, crossed his arms, and waited. Complete silence. Even Marcus, the 6-foot senior who made teachers quit, found himself staring at his desk. "Good morning," Thompson said, his voice calm but carrying weight. "We're going to learn about World War II today. But first, I want to show you something." He rolled up his left sleeve slowly, revealing a forearm covered in faded scars. Not tattoos, not designs, battle scars, the kind that come from places you don't talk about. Sarah, a junior in the front row, gasped quietly. She'd never seen anything like it. One scar ran from his wrist almost to his elbow, jagged and deep. Another curved around his forearm like a question mark. "These aren't from a car accident," Thompson said simply. "They're from serving this country, and every single one of them taught me something about respect, discipline, and what it really means to fight for something bigger than yourself." The room stayed silent. Even the class clowns in the back had stopped whispering. But it was during lunch that everything changed. Thompson was eating alone in the teacher's lounge when Marcus, the same kid who intimidated every other teacher, knocked on the door. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something?" Thompson looked up from his sandwich. "Of course." Marcus sat down hesitantly. "Those scars on your arm, were you in the military?" Thompson studied the boy for a moment. Marcus was tough on the outside. Thompson could see something else, curiosity, maybe even respect. "Why do you ask?" "My dad was in the army, Iraq. He's got scars too, but he never talks about them. Says some things are better left quiet." Thompson nodded slowly. "Your father sounds like a wise man. Were you in Iraq too?" Thompson was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice lower now. "Among other places." Marcus leaned forward. "What unit?" That's when Thompson did something he hadn't done in 15 years of civilian life. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and showed Marcus a worn photograph. 8 men in desert camouflage, faces painted, eyes hard. The man in the center was younger, leaner, but unmistakably Thompson. "SEAL Team 6, Thompson said quietly, "but that was a long time ago." Marcus's eyes widened. "No way! You're a Navy SEAL?" "Was. Now I'm a teacher." "But why? Why teach high school?" Thompson looked at the photograph for a moment, then closed his wallet. "Because the most important battles aren't always fought with weapons, Marcus. Sometimes they're fought in classrooms with kids who've lost their way." That afternoon, word spread through Jefferson High like wildfire. Not because Marcus told everyone, he was smarter than that, but because something had changed in room 237. The atmosphere was different. Students who usually disrupted class were sitting up straight, taking notes. Kids who never participated were raising their hands. Sarah noticed it first during history class. Thompson wasn't just teaching about D-Day. He was describing it with a precision that made you feel like you were there. His knowledge of military strategy, his understanding of combat psychology, the way he explained what those soldiers must have felt hitting the beaches. "Mr. Thompson," she said during a quiet moment, "you talk about this stuff like you were there." Thompson smiled slightly. "I wasn't at D-Day, Sarah, but I've been on beaches where the outcome wasn't certain." After class, Sarah approached his desk. She was one of the good students, honor roll, college-bound, but she'd been struggling lately with some personal issues at home. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. When you were a SEAL, were you ever scared?" Thompson set down his pen and looked at her seriously. "Every single mission. But you did it anyway?" "Fear isn't the enemy, Sarah. Fear keeps you alive. The enemy is letting fear stop you from doing what's right." She nodded, understanding more than she expected. "Is that why you became a teacher? Because it's the right thing to do?" Thompson thought for a moment. "I spent 20 years protecting people I'd never meet. Now I get to protect people I see every day. In a way, this is just a different kind of mission." The next week, something remarkable happened. Marcus, the troublemaker who'd made teachers quit, stayed after class to ask Thompson about college. Sarah, who'd been struggling with anxiety, started participating more in discussions. Even the other teachers noticed, whenever Thompson was in the building, the hallways were quieter, more respectful. But it was during a school lockdown drill that everyone truly understood who James Thompson really was. The announcement came during third period. "This is a lockdown drill. All teachers and students remain in your classrooms." But 30 seconds later, the principal's voice came back on, tense and urgent. "This is not a drill. This is not a drill." Reports started filtering in. Someone had been seen on campus with what appeared to be a weapon. Police were on their way, but it would take time. In room 237, Thompson's entire demeanor changed. Gone was the mild-mannered substitute teacher. His voice became sharp, authoritative. Everyone, away from the windows. "Now, Sarah, lock the door. Marcus, help me move this desk." The students did as they were told without question. There was something about Thompson's tone that demanded immediate obedience. "Mr. Thompson," whispered Jessica, a freshman who was clearly terrified. "What's happening?" Thompson was at the window, not looking out, but positioning himself between the students and any potential threat. "We're going to be fine, but I need everyone to stay calm and do exactly what I say." For the next 20 minutes, Thompson kept the class calm while simultaneously monitoring the situation outside. He spoke in low, reassuring tones to the students while his eyes constantly scanned for threats. His body language was different, coiled, ready, protective. When the all-clear finally came, it had been a false alarm. Someone had mistaken a maintenance worker's tool for a weapon. Thompson visibly relaxed. But the students had seen it, the transformation, the way he'd instinctively put himself between them and danger. After the lockdown ended, Marcus approached Thompson again. "That wasn't just teacher training, was it? The way you handled that situation?" Thompson straightened his tie, becoming the mild-mannered substitute again. "I've been in a few tense situations before." "I bet you have. Mr. Thompson, can I ask you something else?" "Sure. Why don't you tell people about what you did, I mean? Most guys would be bragging about being a SEAL." Thompson sat on the edge of his desk, considering the question. "Marcus, the men I served with, some of them didn't come home. They don't get to have second careers, don't get to make a difference in classrooms like this. I figure the best way to honor them is to do the work quietly." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's why you never yell at us. You've seen real things to get angry about." Something like that. The semester continued, and Thompson's reputation grew quietly through the school. He never spoke about his military service unless directly asked, and even then, he kept his answers brief. But his impact was undeniable. Sarah's grades improved dramatically. She started talking about joining the military herself, maybe becoming a nurse in the Navy. Marcus, who'd been heading for dropout status, began staying after school for tutoring. Other students who'd never shown interest in history started asking to be transferred to Thompson's classes. The other teachers noticed, too. Linda Martinez, who'd been teaching at Jefferson for 15 years, pulled Thompson aside one day. "James, I don't know what you're doing differently, but these kids, they're different when they come out of your class, more focused, more respectful." Thompson shrugged. "I just treat them like they matter." "It's more than that. You carry yourself like someone who's seen things, been places." Thompson looked at her for a moment, considering. "We've all seen things, Linda. We've all been places. The question is, what we do with those experiences." But it was near the end of the semester when everything came full circle. The school was hosting a Veterans Day assembly, and they had invited local veterans to speak. Thompson had quietly declined when asked to participate. However, during the assembly, as various veterans shared their stories, Marcus did something unexpected. He stood up during the Q&A portion and said, "I have a question for all the veterans here. How do you know when someone is truly serving their country?" An older veteran, a Vietnam vet, answered, "Service isn't always about wearing a uniform, son. Sometimes the biggest service is done quietly, by people who never ask for recognition." Marcus nodded and sat down, but his eyes found Thompson in the back of the auditorium. Thompson gave him the slightest nod of acknowledgement. After the assembly, several students approached Thompson. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. They simply said, "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for everything." As the school year ended, Thompson prepared to move on to his next assignment. But on his last day, he found something unexpected on his desk. Letters, dozens of them, from students, from other teachers, from parents who'd heard about the quiet substitute who'd made such a difference. Sarah's letter read, "Mr. Thompson, you taught me that strength isn't about being loud or tough. It's about being reliable, being there when people need you. I'm applying to the Naval Academy because of you." Marcus wrote, "You showed me that real men don't prove themselves by tearing others down. They prove themselves by lifting others up. I'm going to community college next year and then transferring to a 4-year school. First person in my family to go to college." There were dozens more. Stories of changed lives, new directions, hope restored. Thompson read each letter carefully, then placed them in a folder. As he packed up his desk, the principal, Mrs. Davis, stopped by. "James, I don't suppose you'd consider staying on permanently. We could use more teachers like you." Thompson smiled. "Thank you, but I think I'm needed elsewhere." "Can I ask you something? Off the record?" Thompson nodded. "You're not just a regular substitute, are you? You're something special." Thompson picked up his briefcase and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "Mrs. Davis, every teacher in this building is something special. The difference is whether they choose to use it." And then he was gone, walking out of Jefferson High School the same way he'd walked in, quietly, purposefully, leaving behind a legacy that would outlast any medal or commendation. Because James Thompson understood something that few people do. The greatest battles aren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they're fought in high school classrooms with teenagers who need to believe that someone cares enough to show up day after day and treat them like they matter. He'd served his country with honor in the shadows of classified operations. Now he served it in the light of everyday moments, one student at a time. Some heroes wear uniforms, others wear ties and carry lesson plans, but they all share one thing in common. They show up when they're needed most. So I ask you, have you ever encountered someone who seemed ordinary until you discovered they were anything but? Someone who served quietly, without fanfare, making a difference one person at a time? Share their story in the comments below. And if this story touched you, subscribe to Story with Jorge for more incredible tales of hidden heroes walking among us. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are about people who never asked to be the story at all. Until next time, remember, heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes you have to look a little closer to see the strength that's been there all along.